The Supreme Court, did you see the LBGT ruling in the Supreme Court?
I did. Let's talk about it.
So the Supreme Court ruled that it is illegal to fire someone based on their sexual orientation or their trans status, their identification as a trans person or whatever. Um, this might get me in trouble with a lot of the classical liberal types on the show. I don't
Like
like
me?
this. Yeah, I don't like this
Okay.
decision. Uh, I think you should be able to fire people for whatever reason you want. It can be a racist reason, it can be a sexist reason, it can be a transphobic reason. You should be allowed to fire anyone you want for any reason you want, unless you have a contract that says otherwise, in which case you should go to court for violating your contract. Um, it doesn't mean I want to live in a world where people get fired for stuff. I would rather live in a world in which it would be completely reasonable for companies to have agreements generally, like even big companies like Amazon. We won't do business. We won't carry your products if you don't agree to not fire people for these. Like that will be fine, right? And enforceable. But I don't want the state getting involved in who you can and can't hire. I think it's a bad decision. You should, your company is an extension of yourself. It is you have a right to do what you want with it. It violates the freedom of association idea. You should be able to fire people for any reason, even a bad one, legally. Morally, should you? No. And if I ran a company, and I would totally want to be part of an environment in which not only did we not do that, but we asked that other people that we did business with didn't do that, and we could have uh, our own agreements with people, right, about what the rules are and what's acceptable and what's not. Unions might actually get into negotiations and do some things there as well, but the idea that the government has a role to play in tell you what is a valid, like who you have to associate with in your business. There's nothing different than fundamentally, I know people are going to not see this parallel, but fundamentally, there is no philosophic difference between the Supreme Court saying you can't fire someone for being gay than saying you have to marry someone for being, like, you can't not marry someone, right? You can't, like, there's no difference saying, like, well, you only don't want to marry them because they're trans. Like, yes, that's a reason, right? That might be a reason why you don't want to marry
Right.
someone. Like, there's no fundamental difference between hiring them as a company or doing anything with them. That is your right to associate with whom you want. Racist and horrible people will associate with people that they want. And I would push culture in the direction where we don't do that. I would never fire someone for being gay or trans. I might fire someone for having a radical social justice ideology if I could get away with it, because I think it's destructive and harmful to the workplace and it's racist. But not for their gender or their sexuality. I don't want to know
Right.
their gender or sexuality. But I don't. But there's a difference, and I think this is what separates individualism, like the thinking of an individualist, from the thinking of a statist. There's a difference between what's moral and what's legal. There needs to be a difference, and that's the argument I'm going to make.
Yeah. Well, as someone who I guess is more of the classical liberal, I don't disagree with you. We've kind of talked about this before. I mean, I've been fired from one job uh, because my beliefs were wrong, right? Like they found out I didn't vote for Beto, and then everything started changing.
Right. I remember
And
that.
but I think they should have been. And I'm in an at will state, and actually, one of the things he said to me was, "I don't have to give you a reason. I'm in an at will state." Yeah, and you can fire the thing about saying you can't fire people for these reasons, but you can for these is like, where does that line? Then you get people who rightly are like, well, hey, wait a minute. If you can't fire me for being a woman, then you also shouldn't be able to fire me for being a wrong thinker, right? Well, I actually don't. I think that they should be able to fire you. I'm like you, like for
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
I don't. And there's a difference between, like you've pointed out, between what is legal and what's moral. I think it should be legal. I don't think it's moral. I
No.
don't think it's moral to fire someone for their sex, their sexuality, their race, their religion, any of those things. I don't think it's moral or ethical.
Right.
But like you said, society evolves. Like people stop frequenting businesses of their own accord that discriminate. And I think it's a short step to forcing people to also perform services they don't want to perform, like the cake baker
Like
who did not
waxing.
want to make a right. Or like, okay, so two examples. And if you guys are new to our channel, these are two great examples. If you want to, again, ask an SJW a question that might make them think, but more than likely it's just going to fry their brain because they don't know the answer. They know what they think about the cake baker, the Christian cake baker who didn't want to be forced to make a wedding cake for a gay wedding. Like, perform this service, make this cake, right? They think that's wrong because they think that everything that they think is immoral should be illegal. So they say, well, he should be forced to bake the cake, right? Ask them about the question of the Muslim woman who was fired for not wanting to perform a service, not wanting to wax the genitals of a trans woman, and watch their heads explode. Because literally the way they choose is because their ideology, their sense of morality is based on this whole identity politics hierarchy. They don't know where to put Muslim woman and trans woman on the hierarchy yet. And they're kind of like an even, right? So they don't know. Do we come down on the side of the Muslim woman or the trans woman? It's not about principles to
This
them.
is the
It's
kind
not
of thing
about
that's hotly
whether
contested around the campfire at SJW cookouts.
at SJW cookouts, which one's more oppressed. That's also how they vote, by the way. They just vote based on identity and who has the more oppression points most of the time. But they don't know. They're like, which one has the more oppression points? I don't know which one to choose, trans woman or Muslim woman. They're not choosing based on principle. They're not forming opinions. There are no principles. Yeah.
Right. Which is part of to circle all the way back, that's part of the bad philosophy that's been taught in schools. Like, people have become pragmatists, not principled. And so the left basically now believes in no principles. So the end justifies the means completely. And it's a completely, they don't have any moral guilt about that. So whatever they need to say or do in order to tear down what they view as an oppressive capitalist system, that gets done.